Right. Okay, welcome to New Perspectives in Social Development, held by Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center, Fountain in USA and Surat, India, in collaboration with our university. We are happy to have with us today Dr. Sumitra Basu, who will continue on his previous presentation, The Descent into and Ascent from the Subconscious and Inconscient Realms. Today we shall focus on the concept of evolution of consciousness, the nature and role of the soul or the psychic being in the evolutionary ascent, the purpose of rebirth, and Sri Aurobindo's unique concept of karma and the emergence of a new being. Let me briefly introduce our eminent speaker, researcher and practitioner of integral yoga psychology and psychotherapy in the light of Sri Aurobindo, Dr. Sumitra Basu. He is a psychiatrist by profession, working with consciousness paradigms. He conducts workshops on personal growth and is a founder editor of Namah, the Journal of Integral Health. He has authored the book Integral Health and is deeply interested in the vision of integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother with regard to mental health. He has developed a module of consciousness-based psychology and together with Michael Majowicz has authored a book on consciousness-based psychology, which is in the press now. Which looks at psychopathology and counseling from an entirely new perspective that arises from the experiential teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. He can be accessed at consciousnessbasedcounseling.com. So today is the topic of the utmost importance, the evolution of consciousness, the fundamental concept of integral yoga and the Vedic systems of knowledge. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Sumitra Basu to shed some light onto this profound topic of on evolution of consciousness in the light of Sri Aurobindo. Please, Sumitra.
Thank you. And so we will be talking about evolution. We had talked about involution, that very shortly, which is that anything which evolves has to be involved already. Otherwise, evolution cannot just start from a zero. So whatever is evolving is actually involved beforehand as a potentiality in the inconscious, and it is from the inconscious that the evolution will begin. So these are two movements that are the evolution of consciousness that is coming up, and before that whatever is being evolved is involved as a potentiality, and this involvement of the potentialities of the superconscious into the inconscious is also a methodical involvement. We had traced it in the last two sessions where we discussed how while descending the consciousness, the supreme consciousness gets condensed, gets what you call densified, and while it is becoming condensed and densified, it is also preparing non-evolutionary planes of consciousness, non-evolutionary planes of consciousness, and this, and until it comes down into the inconscious. And so there are non-evolutionary planes of consciousness at every level. That is the level of the non-evolutionary plane of the mind, of the vital, of the life energy, and of all every other planes. So we will not go into that because we have discussed that before, and you can go into the previous slides to if you want to recapitulate. And now we'll be talking about the opposite movement, evolution, but it is not exactly the opposite in that sense, because evolution is occurring from the inconscious, but whatever is being evolved is manifested in the earth consciousness. So when the tribal worlds were formed, the non-evolutionary worlds were formed. These non-evolutionary worlds, they were arranged in a graded way in the cosmos. So they were existing in the cosmos. In the cosmic consciousness, the non-evolutionary worlds are existing. But the evolutionary worlds that are going to manifest, they are going to manifest not in the not above the earth, but in the earth. So earth is also in the cosmos, it is like that, but the cosmic consciousness is beyond the earth. It is something of which the earth consciousness is a small part. So everything is now going to happen in the earth consciousness, where something or the other is going to manifest one after another. So again in a very sequential way. So this is a very important difference. And then you have to remember two things, that the non-evolutionary worlds are actually helping in the emergence of the evolutionary worlds. You see, whenever there is an evolution, there are two forces that are acting. So that is a push from below. So something is pushing from below, that you have to come out, you have to blossom, you have to manifest. So something is pushing from below. But the thing that is being pushed from below, while it is going up, there is a risk that it might come down again, because it is being pushed from the inconscious, and the inconscious is very powerful. And and like the gravity, like the pull of gravity, whatever is evolving can again be pulled back into the inconscious, so that it is not pulled back. So something is going to hold it. You see, like people hold the dolls during puppet shows. So there is a puppet show going on, and then from above somebody is modulating it, somebody is helping to make the puppets dance by a string. So it is something like that. The non-evolutionary worlds are also helping out to what you call, to allow the emergence to occur. So they are also influencing in a way, so that the that is the plane of consciousness which is evolving doesn't lapse back into the inconscious. So that is a responsibility they have. So though they are scattered, and they are in the cosmic consciousness, and they are there in a graded way, of course scattered, but in a graded way they are scattered, but they are having their work, and that work is a very important work. And so every point in evolution, there are two forces therefore that are acting. There is something that is pushing from below, and there is something from is acting from above. And you see, when the mind is manifesting, the non-evolutionary plane of mind is also trying to pull it up. So at every plane, these two forces are acting, and that is why it is so very difficult, impossible to manufacture a plane of consciousness in a laboratory. Because in a laboratory you can do something at the ground level where matter energy is operating, but how you can have an influence erected and supported from the cosmic consciousness, how you can reproduce that in the laboratory? You can't do that. So that is the difference. And then mind you, again, all these movements of evolution and involution, where I told you that the involution is happening before the evolution, all these are not related in time. So they are related in consciousness. So they are not things that are happening in linear time. All things are happening together. So you have to view in a circular way. So time is not linear, no? Time is global, time is circular. It is our way of seeing things in a partial way, that we classify time into linear zones, but time actually is not linear. Time is actually a global phenomenon, and this is happening within that context of that global time. So it is not that you can understand this, that in a simple linear way, that something is happening just before in time, before the evolution is going to take place. Not like that. All things are happening together. Only we are trying to understand it, how things are placed in the great, what you call, in the great ether, or the great, what you call, in the great void, where everything is manifesting. Now we'll go to the we will just share the screen with the slide. And so we will be discussing today the evolution of consciousness. Mind you, what Sri Aurobindo is describing is an evolution of consciousness, and it is an evolution which is cosmic in character. It is an evolution which is cosmic in character. So it is not the way we view biological evolution. So that is also an important thing that is happening also. Sri Aurobindo is not negating the biological evolution that is happening in its own sphere. But behind the biological evolution, in fact, allowing the biological evolution to take place is an evolution of consciousness, which is there behind everything. And this is a cosmic evolution. So And in this kind of evolution, there are two things that are evolving, which are very interesting and which we have to understand. So there are two perspectives of this evolution. One is the evolution of the planes of consciousness. As I said, that the planes of consciousness are evolving one after another, and not only one after another, but one in another. For example, when the life energy manifests, so the life energy manifests, no, it is now manifesting in the physical consciousness. So the physical consciousness becomes animate. It was inanimate, it becomes it was inanimate, and the physical consciousness becomes animate when life energy manifested in the matrix of physical consciousness. Now in that matrix where life energy manifested in the physical consciousness, in that matrix the next step that is to manifest is the mind. So think everything is manifesting one after another, and the planes previous, they are being taken up and they're being upgraded. So when the physical consciousness became upgraded, when the life plane manifested, and when the life plane got upgraded, when the mind manifested, so all the planes are actually having the essence of all the previous planes. So they are not disconnected. All the planes of consciousness that are evolving are not disconnected from one another. So they are all connected. And in the matrix of one, the next one is going to take place. So this is an evolution of the planes of consciousness. So this is happening, and I said that this is happening because of two forces. That is one from the evolutionary research, and the other the influences from the non-evolutionary worlds, which are actually helping in the evolution of the planes of consciousness, so that whatever is evolving doesn't slip back into the inconscious. But then something else is happening. And this is, you remember in the first day when we talked about the evolution, that the superconscious is descending into the inconscious. That's the involution, the descent of the superconscious into the inconscious. Now that descent was happening along parallel lines. You see, there were parallel lines that were descending. So there was the line of the avatar that was descending. There were the lines of the planes of consciousness that were descending. So that was the plane of the soul also that was descending as a soul spark. So now that soul spark is going to evolve as a psychic being to support the individual manifestation. So this psychic world is not part of the worlds of the grades of planes. So it is not part of that planes of consciousness. This is something which is parallelly happening. So this is happening as a parallel event. So this evolution of the psychic being is happening side by side. It is a parallel event that is happening. Only they are correlated. But they are actually, it is not, the psychic being is not evolving in the matrix of the planes of consciousness. It is not doing that. It is separate from them. It is not part of that world. It is part of a different world. It is part of its own world, which is the world of the soul. Although it is the world of that existential aspect of Sachidananda, the Sat, that came down as a soul spark. And of Sachidananda, I told you that Sat, Chit, Ananda, which have been modified into Chit Shakti Ananda. Chit Shakti or consciousness force came down, and that is evolving as the planes of consciousness. But the psychic world is a different world that is occurring, but they are correlated with each other. Now, this psychic being is, again, it is projected by the Atma or the Jivatma, which is the same thing in the universal poise. You see, that is the same thing. The soul is present in the universal poise as the Jivatma, and in the transcendental consciousness, it is present as the Paramatma, the supreme divine being. So it is the same spirit substance, but the same spirit substance is present in three poises. It is there in the transcendental poise as Paramatma, and the cosmic consciousness, it is there as the Jivatma, and in the individual consciousness, supporting the individual consciousness, it has become the Chaitya Purush or the psychic being. So it is the same thing in different poises. Same thing in different poises for different meanings or for different purpose they have been projected. But they are the same thing. It's not just part of that. The psychic being is not that part of the Jivatma. It's a projection of the whole Jivatma just in another poise. You see, it's not a part. The Jivatma is not a part of the Paramatma. It's the Paramatma projected as a whole as a Jivatma. The Jivatma as a whole is projected as a psychic being. So it is just a poise. It is just different poises of the same spirit substance. Now, you see about the planes of consciousness, we are talking about the evolution of the planes of consciousness. So, the evolution of the planes of consciousness and the physical, vital, and the mental planes have manifested already. And then what is now going to manifest? Why we are not seeing new type of species coming out? Because Sri Aurobindo has said that evolution, it doesn't stop with the mental plane. Evolution doesn't stop with the mental plane, which is our fallacy, which we think. And then the question definitely arises, then why new species are not arising? We are not seeing them. This is what Sri Aurobindo answers, that after the mental plane has been reached, a certain consolidation has occurred at the plane of consciousness. And what is now important is to evolve new powers of consciousness instead of new species. Is the new powers of consciousness that they are going to manifest now, and is actually that is what that is now happening. They are working. And uh, the while explaining these new powers of consciousness, then Sri Aurobindo had to bring in his own perspective of the phenomenon of the manifestation, and where here he explains that throughout the tradition, Sri Aurobindo explains that one can always shift from the cognitive plane to the great void, which is above all cognitive plane, and which has always been there as a possibility, as a potentiality, as something that has been attained, or people have attempted it in the Indian tradition. So people have just shifted from the cognitive plane to the great void, to the nirvana or to the Brahman, which is above all cognition. You see, then Life Divine, he says that there is a word called neti neti, that place cannot be described in words, because he says it cannot be described because it surpasses all our cognitive plane. Because if you surpass cognition, you do not have words, you do not have terms to describe that phenomenon. So that's why you have to say that it is nothing that we know, that it is nothing that we do not know. It is nothing that we know, and it is nothing that we do not know. That was that neti neti of the Indian philosophy. Now, Sri Aurobindo accepts that. Sri Aurobindo accepts that is always, that possibility was always there. Like a galloping train, you can jump from the cognitive consciousness of the mind, you can jump to the great void, you can jump to the Brahman, you can jump to nirvana, you can jump to zero, anywhere. But again, this is his originality, this is his original contribution to the world of thought, that another possibility is also there. So jumping like a galloping train from one station to this void, that is there, but there is another thing that can also be arranged, that another thing that cannot be pursued, another line that can open up. And what is that? That a spiritual mind range can be pursued that traverses supracognitive planes. This is what Sri Aurobindo's original contribution to the world of thought, that above the mind or the cognitive plane, there are supracognitive planes of consciousness. So there's the plane of the higher mind. In the plane of higher mind is the plane of mass ideation, is the plane of mass ideation. So in that higher mind, all ideas, contradictory and complementary, they are there together. You see, in our mind, what happens, that if you want to bring in a new belief, or you want to construct something new, then you have to deconstruct what was there in your mind, and then you have to bring that new construction. For example, if you believe in socialism, and then one day you decide that you will go in for capitalism, then you have to deconstruct that idea of socialism, and you have to bring in that idea of capitalism. So you, to construct something, you have to deconstruct the other thing that was there, and which was not in parity with the one that you are wanting to bring in. But in the higher mind, you don't have to deconstruct. All things add up one after another. So it is the plane of a mass ideation. It is a very higher mind. It is a higher plane above our cognitive mind, and it is a plane where all contradictory and complementary ideas exist side by side with the same weightage, with the same value. They are there. It is a very important thing. I think that the time has now come to shift to this higher mind. As a whole, the world should now shift to this higher mind, because once you shift to the higher mind, then you are above all exclusive ideas. You see, all over the world, that is what is happening today. People think that what I believe is true, and what the others believe, they are not true. You see, to solve this, you have to actually evolve in consciousness, evolve from the ordinary mind to the higher mind. That's Sri Aurobindo's evolution. You see, Sri Aurobindo's evolution of consciousness, you have to understand in many, many different perspectives. One important perspective is that how you can evolve your thinking into a superior type of thinking. So you can go to the higher mind where at a stroke, you are above all exclusive ideas. Remember that Sri Aurobindo had once said that I know that the opposite of what I say is true. I know that the opposite of what I say is true, because he was always acting in the higher mind. But again, Sri Aurobindo was also a bit naughty, so he had added, but at the moment, what I say is truer. But at the moment, what I say is truer. That means that he had to also give something which was consolidated, which would not be diluted. So he had to give something else also. So, but in the beginning, you see the first half, that is acknowledging that everything that I think also has its opposite views, and they are to be they are to be accepted together, acknowledged together. So this is the higher mind, and from the higher mind you can shift to the illumine mind. So all these things I'm just giving a cursory reference. All these things actually require separate sessions by themselves. In the illumine mind, the word is not important. The idea can be represented without the necessity of clothing the idea with words. You see, when they use the word revelatory ideograph, is an idea that reveals itself spontaneously. It illumines spontaneously. You don't have to bring words to describe that idea. So it's a revelatory ideograph. That's how we described it. And then there's above it, there's intuition, which is a very important thing, which Sri Aurobindo in the East and Bergson in the West, they have worked on that. That the next phase is going to be the phase of intuition, and many great things have come to us through intuition, and great philosophies have come to us through intuition. The Vedic mantras have come to us through intuition, and all other things again is a separate chapter by itself. And then from there you shift to the global cognition, and ultimately to the Subba mind, which is the creative consciousness, which is again a very different field, which is again which is totally different from all the other supracognitive planes. So this, we don't have time in going into these details. These all require separate sessions. We'll afterwards, I think that we can plan something like that. But this is how we have to proceed. The evolutionary consciousness. You see, the cognitive consciousness itself is evolving. What I wanted to show when I wrote this is to tell you that it is the cognitive consciousness that itself is evolving. So it's an evolution of the cognitive consciousness. It's evolution of the cognitive consciousness, which is a very interesting thing. It's a very new idea. It's a great idea, and it's a great gift that Sri Aurobindo has given to the world, that you can go ultimately to the creative consciousness, the supreme creative consciousness, which holds the software program. You see, the supermind holds the software program where the unmanifest will become manifest. The unmanifest will become manifest. How it is going to do that? You need a program to run to do it, and that programming is done in the supermind. So that is a very interesting area. We'll come to it afterwards. But just to before we go to the next slide, just to remember that that is an evolution of the cognitive consciousness, whereas before, prior to Sri Aurobindo, you lift the cognitive consciousness because it is limited, and you jump to the great void, which was very interesting, very important. It was the harbinger of true spirituality, of a depth spirituality. But then Sri Aurobindo is a harbinger of a dynamic spirituality, where you fulfill yourself by fulfilling all the potentials that were thrown up. So this is what he is trying to do. He is trying to build on all the potentials that are possible in the evolution, and to develop them, not to miss any point. Then we come to again a very different ballgame. That's the Jivatma, and to understand the Jivatma is a bit difficult. And we all have to concentrate, and we have to meditate and go inside us to understand what is the Jivatma. So Jivatma, I told you, is the poise of the Atma in the cosmic consciousness, which is projecting the psychic being in the individual evolution. Now the Jivatma is therefore above the manifestation. The Jivatma is therefore above the manifestation. It is not inside that whole evolutionary thing that is happening. It is above and beyond. It is supporting it. From above and beyond, it is supporting it. Now, very interesting that Sri Aurobindo said that Jivatma is a portion of the divine, is an angsha of the divine, or angsha of some devata. That's what he had told to Nirodha. When Nirodha had dreamed that he was he had a message in a dream that he was as if he has been born as an Angsha of Shiva. Then, and he was very shy, feeling shy to tell Sri Aurobindo his dream, because he was thinking that he was very important, that he had been derived from Shiva. But then Sri Aurobindo smiled and told, "Oh, come on, everybody's inner being is an Angsha of some devata." This is the answer he gave. But by the inner being, he meant the Jivatma. In that, you see that in that answer which Nirodha was given, he told that everybody's Jivatma is Angsha of some devata. What does it mean? That means that this concept of Jivatma has come from the archetypal ideas in the overmind. And the archetypal ideas in the overmind are again reflections of the real ideas that are formed in the supermind. You see, the creative ideas which are formed in the supermind, they become archetypal ideas in the overmind. And the spiritual archetypes, mind you, it is not the Jungian archetypes, it is the spiritual archetypes. So all this in the overmind, all the archetypal ideas are represented as the different gods, and they are derived from one god. So derived from the same thing, everybody is developing as a different potentiality. All the real ideas are being coming out from the same matrix of the overmind. So that is the main god, but they are being developing as different potentialities. So they are the multifarious gods that are being developed. So the source of the Jivatma is there in that kind of archetypal idea that has been derived again from the real idea, and the archetypal ideas which we know as the overmind gods, or we name as the overmind gods. That is why Sri Aurobindo has said that every Jivatma is an portion of the divine, and it is simultaneously universal and individual. Now this is difficult to understand. It is simultaneously universal and individual. What does it mean? Well, suppose you have a curtain in your house, and the curtain has different folds. You see, each fold of that curtain is a unique Jivatma, though all the folds are connected together, because it is the same curtain. It is the same curtain behind you which is there over your window or over your door. That is the same curtain which is there, but the curtain has different folds. The curtain is folded, and each fold you can consider to be a Jivatma, but each fold is connected with the other folds. So that is why the Jivatma is simultaneously universal and individual. It is very important, because when you realize the Jivatma, what happens? When you realize or identify yourself with the Jivatma, you have a feeling of wideness, great wideness. You have a sense of universality in an individual. You see, only because the Jivatma is simultaneously universal and individual, that is why a realization of the Jivatma will give you this feeling of universality in the individual. So you are both individual and universal. So that is why in India we have a term called impersonality. You see, I always tell the Western audience that when you talk of a Homo sapiens in psychological terms, you say that he has a personality, but we, in the spiritual perspective, we would use the word being, because the being has a dimension of personality and the being has a dimension of impersonality. We all of us, all of our beings have a dimension of personality, and all of our beings have a dimension of impersonality. Again, this is something new, because in Western psychology or contemporary scientific psychology, we always study the human person in terms of personality, but you also have a dimension of impersonality which can be cultivated and which is very enriching and which can give you a completeness, which otherwise you would not have got. So in the Jivatma, you have this silence, you have this freedom, you have this wideness, you have this mastery, wideness. And in Savitri, he has said that once you identify with the Jivatma, then it is very beautiful in the sense that you can be free from the karmic consequences. So if you are identified with the Jivatma, you can be free from the karmic consequences. In future, you will be free from them. So if you identify with the Jivatma, you are going to arise above the load of your karma. But the psychic being is a different thing. It's not a portion, but a projection of the Jivatma. And identification of psychic being gives you the most intense experience. You see, it gives you a most intense experience. We'll come to that. So it doesn't give that experience of wideness, of that impersonality. It gives that intense joy, intense love, or whatever that is intense in terms of the divine consciousness. Whatever is that is intense, the sweetest, what you call the most deepest experiences, that is there in the psychic being. So while the Jivatma gives you that feeling of wideness, the psychic being gives you that feeling of intensity. So it is not universalized like the Jivatma, but supports the individual from behind the heart center. And so the realization of psychic being, what does it give? It gives bhakti, it gives, as I told you, that intensity, that self-giving, surrender, turning of all movements Godwards, discrimination and choice, discrimination and choice of all that belongs to the divine truth, good, beauty, rejection of all that is false, ugly, discordant, which means that the psychic being is spontaneously intuitive. So it has also intuition, a very spontaneous intuition. If you see, when I talked about the planes of consciousness, and there was the plane of intuition far, far above, which is above the, actually the plane of intuition is far above the cognitive mind. That is why Sri Aurobindo was very particular. He used the word intuition and didn't use the word intuitive mind, so that we don't confuse it with the mind, because intuition is something different from the mind. And then again, we see a reflection of intuition in the psychic being, which is very spontaneous. You don't have to achieve it. It is there already spontaneously present. So spontaneously it knows how to differentiate between the truth and falsehood, between the ugly and the beauty. And you see, when you identify with the psychic being, you don't have to be concerned about all those things of morality, na? Because in outer world we want to proceed to truth by our moral systems. But here you see that it is not moral, it is something beyond morality, it is something beyond ethics, it is something happening very spontaneously. So that's the truth, that's the beauty. And mind you, the psychic being is in the depths of your being, it is behind your heart, but it is not the heart chakra. Just one line I will tell this, because chakras itself are a very interesting thing, and they require different what you call discussion, because Sri Aurobindo has given an entirely different view of the chakra system, which is entirely different, which is totally new, and which has now to be presented to the world. Of course, the time is now ripe to be presented. So the heart chakra, what happens? You see, this is the ordinary heart chakra. What does the ordinary heart chakra do? As I told you, that everything comes from the inconscious. So the inconscious, whatever comes, is tainted by the stains of the inconscious. The inconscious has impurities. Impurities as what you call sorrow, falsehood, ignorance. All these things are there in the inconscious, and this what you call this get into all our emotions. And that is why the work of the heart chakra is to free your ordinary love or the ordinary emotions from these impurities by delinking it from the ego, because the ego is also coming and evolving from the inconscious. I will come to the ego, then you will understand this thing. And so the heart chakra, ordinarily what it is doing, it is delinking the purity, what you call the impure love that is coming from below. It is delinking it from the ego and from the hooks with which it is connected, the physical, vital, mental, and it is connecting it to the universal love. And it is a great movement. It is a great movement of universal compassion. Universal compassion in spirituality also happened. One of the ways in which universal compassion was experientially presented to the world was by linking the heart chakra with the universal love. But the psychic being is different. The psychic being is derived from the Atma and is therefore intrinsically pure. It is intrinsically pure. You don't have to purify its emotions. You don't have to purify its love and all things. It is totally pure because it is coming down from the Atma, and the Atma is coming down from the transcendence. So it is coming down from the superconscious. So it is perfect by its nature. Only what you have to perfect is this control over the instruments. The instruments are our instruments, the instruments of our mind, the instruments of our body, the instruments of our life energy. Now, so what we can do is movements that do not go with the psychic. Now we have to clean our inner space of all sorts of desires and all sorts of what you call lower vital tendencies, all sorts of negativities, all sorts of falsehood, so that the psychic forces can come and they prepare a space where afterwards the psychic being can come forward. So what we have to purify is our own receptacle, is our own space. Our own temple inside that has to be built, so that the psychic being can come and be restored on the altar that is there. So this is what work we have to do. But psychic being per se, it is very pure, it is very perfect. You don't have to perfect it, you have to perfect us We have to perfect ourselves so that it can come and have a place inside us. Now, the growth of the psychic being. This is very important in evolution. This is how the psychic being is evolving. So, as we told that there are two evolutionary paradigms that are happening simultaneously: the evolution of the planes of consciousness and the evolution of the soul. So, what is that? That the soul spark descends into the inconscious. The soul spark descends into the inconscious, and it stimulates the formation of a being from that matrix. The inconscious is mud. It is mud because it contains all the things that are opposite of the values of the superconscious. So it contains falsehood, it contains ignorance, it contains what you call sorrow, it contains death. So all these things are there in the inconscious. The opposite of life, opposite of love, opposite of knowledge, all these things are the opposite of joy. All these things are there. And from that mud, something is emerging. Something is evolving from that mud. Now, this is very interesting. That something is emerging from that mud. Why it will emerge? Why? What is the motivation for emergence? The motivation is the soul spark. The soul spark is reminding that something is to be done and emergence is to happen. So the soul spark is very important because it is actually triggering of the process of formation of something from that amorphous mass. Now the unconscious is unformed and disorganized with all negative elements. So therefore the being that arises as the state of ignorance, suffering, falsehood and death. So whatever is evolving is not pure, it is impure. It is already stained with all these things, with ignorance, suffering, falsehood and death. And it would not have done, it would not have evolved. It would have no motivation to evolve. Only the soul spark was there, which actually was stimulating it, that evolve. This is the function that you have to do. This is the work that you have to do. Even if it is mud, from the mud, in the mud that you have to manifest the flower. Now the lotus blooms in the mud. So it is something that is there from behind that is stimulating. The soul spark is doing that. And that is why the evolution has started to occur. Now, when the evolution is starting to occur with all this ignorance, suffering, falsehood and death, all these things and an amorphous mass is organizing itself, it needs a scaffolding around which it will be organized. It needs a scaffolding. A scaffolding is always a temporary thing, but you need a temporary scaffolding around which there is an organization of that material, of that disorganized material. It becomes a bit organized around the scaffolding, and that scaffolding is actually will become the ego. So that scaffolding will become the ego around which things are getting organized. But the scaffolding is also made from all the things that are there in the inconscious. So it is also not something that has been dropped from the higher consciousness like a meteorite. It is also emerging from the inconscious with the elements of the inconscious. So the scaffolding has been made by the elements of the inconscious, but still it is a scaffolding and it is coming up. And when it is coming up, when it is emerging, it will become the ego. While the soul spark that is there behind, it will grow through many lives, accumulating deeper and higher movements till it becomes a psychic individuality, the psychic being. So on one hand you have this amorphous substance organizing around a scaffolding that is going up. So an ego bound individual is coming up. On the other hand, you have from behind a soul spark that is also there as a parallel movement. It is as a correlation. It is taking the deeper and the higher experiences. It is accumulating them till at one time in its evolutionary journey, it becomes a psychic individuality. It becomes a psychic being. So the psychic being, now what happens? It can go through birth to birth. It goes from birth to birth till it becomes a conscious being in a physical body and physical life. You see, till it becomes a conscious being in a physical body and physical life. And the psychic being, of course, because it supports the individual, it has individuality, but it doesn't have egoism. It doesn't have egoism that I exist for myself. Again, egoism is not the ego. Egoism is the attitude that I exist for myself, that I am important. So psychic being doesn't have the egoism, though it has an individuality, which is very interesting. And it is going to birth till it becomes a conscious being in a physical body and physical life. And as Sri Aurobindo has said, that psychic being has a form. the psychic being as a form. There were many people in the ashram in which mother, they had asked the mother to that they wanted to know or wanted to see the psychic being, and with her occult powers she allowed that to happen. To one of my friends who had for a long time wanted and prayed to the mother that he had wanted to see the psychic being, the mother had promised that on his birthday that she would do it. But when he had gone above on the second floor to mother's room on his birthday, but mother was in a trance and she had actually forgotten that she had to show the psychic being to this Sadak. So what happened, that a bird chirped and suddenly mother's trance broke, and she touched that touched my friend, and he suddenly saw in a second, he saw in a swing a small, very very small tiny fetus like baby that was there in that swing. Every second, it was less than a second, that vision. You see that by it has been traditionally said that the psychic being has a form, and that form is like a very small form, like a thumb. It is like a thumb. It is the size of a thumb. So, but these are occult things. We'll not go into it. Once we are just being concerned about the role of psychic being in evolution. Now, once fully formed, when the psychic being has become very developed, it has become an individuality, and it has developed into a very complete individual, in a sense in which it has accumulated all that it had to accumulate, and it has been able to express what it wanted to express. Then a time comes when it is free to take birth or not. So it has a willpower to take whether it will come back in the next life or not. If not, if it doesn't want to come back, then one line of progress stops. This is what Sri Aurobindo says, that if it is once fully formed, it is free to take birth. But if it doesn't want to participate further in the evolution, then one line of progress stops. The other possibility is that it can go to a blissful repose or international quiescence, where actually it accumulates all the experiences, that have happened in life. You see, in a blissful repose, which is between births. This repose is a repose between two births. So somebody has passed away, somebody has died, and the psychic being has left into its own kingdom, where it is a blissful repose, or in an international quiescence, where it is actually accumulating all that experiences, and then it can decide how it can come to the world. That we'll see that how it can come, it can decide. Or it can also it can come as a it can decide to it can come to in an ordinary process. It can decide to come and be associated with other individuals who are being born, but it can do something else. The psychic being, this is what the mother and Sri Aurobindo, what they say, the psychic being can decide to progress further to help in the divine work. So this is another possibility. This possibility is the possibility which we have to now develop for our integral yoga. We have to now facilitate this possibility, so that the psychic being can decide to progress further in the divine work and replace the ego and be the leader. You see, we are being led by our ego. Again, this is again a big subject. When we have a separate session once about the ego and the psychic being, we can come to that. So the psychic being can progress further. Psychic being can progress further. It can replace the ego. It can be the leader. Now, if it progresses further and it wants to be the leader, then what happens? The outer being and the inner being, because inside us we have an outer being and superficial personality, we have an inner being, and we have the inmost being, which is the psychic being. The inner being and the outer being actually have to merge. They have to merge so that the psychic being can take over the function of the ego. So this is again all these things we need a separate discussion, that how that merging can take place. It can take all of a sudden with a thump. It can take also quite some time to merge. So there are different ways of the two beings to merge, but then that process can happen when the psychic being can become the leader and it can replace the ego. But again, there is something else. The psychic being has some other work it can do. It can progress yet further. It can progress yet further. It can not only be the leader that is replacing the ego, it can be a template for a new creation. Only it can be a template for a new creation. So these possibilities of the psychic being, these are things that these have been developed by Mother and Sri Aurobindo. You see that psychic being was known in essence as the Chaitya Purush, as the Antar Purush. It was always known in the Indian tradition, but of course Sri Aurobindo and the mother developed it into a way that it can be brought down into practical psychology, practical yoga, in practical life. And then Sri Aurobindo has modulated the whole thing further. Mother and Sri Aurobindo, they have modulated it further so they can go and become with the leader of the personality, not only be satisfied in his own realm, as others have always said, that you go to the soul and be satisfied, leave the ego. You see, it is a very important step, this one, that is replacing the ego. But because the ego is so unpredictable, we are not, again, Sri Aurobindo doesn't view the ego in a moralistic way. You see, it is unpredictable. So the solution always there in the Indian tradition was that you leave the ego, you kick out the ego, and you go to the super soul. You can go to the great void. You can go to the Brahma or Nirvana or wherever you want, above and away from everything. Only Sri Aurobindo says that you replace the ego by something better, and you can, because it is already there, the psychic being, you can bring it forward. This is Sri Aurobindo's work. It is a very new thing that he has given. It was always there, but it is using it for a different work, which was never used in the way that he has been using the psychic being. It was never used in that way before. And then the mother progressed it further. She progressed it so that, progressed that work further so that the psychic being could be a template for the new creation. Now, what does the psychic being carry? The psychic being carries the essence of the most intense experiences in life. You see, where if I ask you, anybody of you anybody of you who is 50 years old, if I ask you that, can you recollect how many essential memories you have of great intensity, which were very significant for you, for your life, for turning point in your life? It was something that had a divine touch. You will not be able to tell 5 or 10. Maybe for the first time when you saw death, when the first time when you went in front of the Samadhi of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, for the first time when you saw a Himalayan peak, like that. You see, most of the things will be erased out. Ordinary memories are erased out and they go into the cosmic waste paper basket. So the psychic being is carrying the essence of the most intense experiences in life, where the divine touch was present, the turning points of life. Even you have moments of catastrophes. If you remember, that was a catastrophe, there was an accident when there was a guidance, there is a protection. Something behind you protected, something behind you guided, something behind you had brought peace and stillness. Even outwardly, there was a commotion that was going on. There are moments like that in life. If you remember, that was the psychic being was acting at that time. And then Mother has also explained many times that the state of psychic being at times of death, which is a very, very important for the psychic being, for this for the next birth, no? How the things will be organized in the next birth. So the memory templates, how they will work, the memory traces that are leaving the human being at a time when a person is dying, at that time the state of the psychic being at that moment is also important. So this is a new integer that the Mother has added. But these things are very practical things. You see that the psychic being is carrying the most intense experiences. I use it very practically in patients of dementia. You see, in patients of dementia, people forget things, and everybody gets so upset that life has been spoiled, he has become a vegetable. And I tell them, nothing has been spoiled. He is carrying the most intense experiences of his life in the psychic being, which will be carried from life to life. He might have forgotten certain names, or he have forgotten how to count money, or he have forgotten how to see a Google map. That doesn't matter. What matters is that the psychic being is always carrying the most intense experiences in life, and that is always there, and it is there, and is those experiences which will be carried from life to life. Now, so these memory traces, you see, when person passes away, the memory traces which are there in the psychic conscious being, they remain in the cosmic consciousness. They remain in the cosmic consciousness. So the memory traces of the psychic being can remain in the cosmic consciousness, and afterwards they can influence many receptive subjects who are being born. You see, many subjects can be influenced. So if there is Beethoven's music, if it was there, and after that many people were who are receptive to Beethoven's music can be influenced by that music. I think that is the reason why Beethoven said that when he was dying, his last words were, I shall hear in heaven. I shall hear in heaven. These were his last words. So he knew that what he had created was immortal. And of course, a fully formed psychic memory template can be transferred in its entirety in selected cases. But that you have to have a very fully formed being, very fully formed conscious being can only do that. It is very rare that a fully formed psychic memory, what you call complex, can be transferred in toto to somebody else who is being born. That is a different thing. So it is very difficult. It is something very selective. It can happen only when you have worked on your consciousness for a methodically and systematically for a long time. You have worked and you have become fully conscious. Only then that can happen. So rebirth, therefore, is a cosmic phenomenon. It is not that the Ram is becoming Sham or Tom is becoming Harry in the next birth. The psychic being is entering the life of the cosmos as a whole. You see, psychic being is entering the life as a whole. It is not that it is being transferred as a subject A becoming subject B. It is not like that. All the memories of the psychic being, they are being transferred in a way so that the psychic being can enter into the life of the whole as a whole. So in terms of rebirth, we say that Sri Aurobindo's concept of rebirth is a rebirth in consciousness. One is reborn in consciousness. So it is not an individualistic way of seeing things, rebirth. This is the way in which ordinary reincarnation theories, they work. Ordinary reincarnation theories are more biased towards the individual, that you become this in the next life. Not for Sri Aurobindo. It is a cosmic phenomenon. One is reborn in consciousness, not one is reborn in this body and that body. That is not important. Now, then how do people remember past lives? The outer personality and the subconscious dissolve at the demise. You see, this is again interesting, that the outer personality and the subconscious dissolve at demise. This is what Sri Aurobindo says, that every birth, the outer personality is being made in consonance with the demands of that time, demands of that culture, demands of that time period. So my personality today as a psychiatrist would be different from if I would have been a psychiatrist 100 years back. The concerns would be different. The what you call the milieu would be different. The priorities would have been different. I would have been a different personality. So the same personality is never constructed again. There is never a replica or like that. So the outer personality is always dissolved at demise, and together with the outer personality, the subconscious dissolves at demise. Now this is practically important because you have now so past stage therapies everywhere. And if you ask me what is the past stage therapy, has it some value, I would tell you that the outer personality is always reformed. It is never something that is being formed in the way it was formed in the past. So you cannot trace like that to things. Actually, you are trying to be in contact with the things which are in the process of elimination. When you are doing past life therapy, you are trying to be in contact with the things which are already in the process of elimination. But our idea is to go forward. For Sri Aurobindo, the most interesting word for Sri Aurobindo was the unborn idea. He was always interested with the unborn idea, the unborn thing that is going to be born, the unborn idea that is going to manifest. So we are always going for the future. We are not going to be tied with the past. Now, the psychic memories of the past lives, they come in flashes. So, as Mother said, that you remember a circumstance at one point of life, at one moment of life, you remember, and that it comes in flashes. And it doesn't come as a whole dramatic what you call story. So, only a completely formed conscious being, as Mother says, Sri Aurobindo says, they can remember exactly details, or else one can know by yoga drishti. And therefore detailed fanciful past memories, that I was a king, or I was this, I was that, all these things might not be true. They might be totally fancy, but still there is something that is happening. People tell of past memories. I will just tell you that 2-3 years back, one autistic child was brought to me he is a Bengali child, and 4-year-old, and that child didn't have an ability to talk. He used to mutter some sounds like like that. Completely retarded, totally retarded. And they had brought a lot of number of letters, alphabets, English alphabets. They had brought in cardboard cutouts of letters were brought, and the letters were thrown on the floor, and he organized the letters, and the letter he organized it as the first word that he organized was, which he does always, murder, MURDER, murder. And then the next word that he organized was Europe, EUROPE. I think people were believing that he was murdered in Europe in the past birth. Now it is totally true. I had a video. I took a video picture of that. Unfortunately, I should have shown it there. But how these things happen? These things happen because, as Mother says, that vital entities or vital fragments of the consciousness, they remain in the cosmic consciousness for some time, and they can do such kind of miracles, or they can show you such things. They can show you, give you some inkling of something that has happened. And as the Mother said, that they are in a domain where thought can be read. They can tell what a subject is thinking. That is why when in planchets, you call subtle beings when you are doing planchet, and this being comes, God knows who comes. I don't think that the person who is being evoked comes, somebody else can come, and that being that comes can go on telling you something of your future, or something, a thought reading. It can do a thought reading of yours like an astrologer. How it is doing it? Because it is in a domain where thought can be read. So this is an interesting area. Again, all these are very interesting areas, and these require separate sessions to understand in details. We are just touching it as it is pertaining to our evolutionary paradigm. So these vital entities formed by decomposition can remain, and they can manifest all sorts of old memories. They can come, but they will do it for a certain time. After that, they will also dissolve. So it is not that they will go on to continue to do this for year after year. They have a time period. After that, they will also, these vital entities will dissolve. Now the object of birth is to grow by experience. So past influences are learning experiences. Past experiences are always learning experiences. So Sri Aurobindo considered that the theory, you see that you are born, we are talking about how, whether you will be born as a sinner in next life because you have done so many wrong things in this life. But Sri Aurobindo says that it is too symmetrical to be true, that the phenomenon of karma and the phenomenon of rebirth doesn't mean that you have to give lollipops to the good and the canings to the bad. These are Sri Aurobindo's words, lollipops and canings. And so they are too symmetrical to be true. He doesn't believe in that, that there is a moral schoolmaster, that the theory of karma is not a moralistic schoolmaster activity. It is something that is helping us to move along the evolutionary paradigm. You see, good leads us to a higher nature above falsehood and suffering, and ill pulls us towards lower nature of suffering and evil. So the object of karma in each life, it is to push you towards the higher nature, and whatever experiences you need to go to the higher nature, you will be given that experiences. Sometimes unless you get a shock from a lower nature, you don't have the stimulation to shift to the higher nature in life, unless sometimes you are betrayed by your friends, might be betrayed by your own best friend, or you by your fiance, or you have suffered at the hands of others, or something has happened which was very traumatic. Unless that happens, and you have not, or you have fallen in the trap of falsehood, and unless you have come out of it, or unless you have gone through it, you
Shift
don't
duty, morning
understand.
shift, afternoon shift, 8 hours, 8 hours duty.
Pardon?
Could you please mute your microphones who entered? That is because we are recording the session. Thank you. Sorry. Sorry, Sumitra. Please go ahead.
So this is okay.
Yes,
So
yes.
this is okay. So what we are going is to our main aim is to transcend karma. We are not going to be immersed in the machinations of karma. We are going to transcend karma. So karma means here in Sri Aurobindo's paradigm that you shift from the lower nature to the higher nature. That's the karma that has to be done. And through yoga, the soul goes towards freedom. So when we are speaking of karma from Sri Aurobindo's perspective, we don't have to be worried that what past sins we have done in past lives. No? People frequently go to these past life readers. Somebody that they told me that in past life I had killed my teacher. That is why in this life I have come to be his disciple, because last life I had killed my teacher. So all these things are not of a concern here. What of a concern here is that we have to transcend or shift from the lower nature to the higher nature. That is the work that we have to do. And one needs to have an experience of the psychic being as well as the Jivatma. Now, one needs to have an experience of the psychic being as well as the Jivatma. And identity, this is an important thing which Sri Aurobindo in a very humorous way has presented in a conversation between two persons in his writings in Isha Upanishad, because it is very interesting. I had given the page number that this question was asked that what are the past deeds that have created bondage? Because this question was asked because if you identify with the Jivatma, you are assured that your future deeds will not create bondage. Once you identify with the Jivatma, the future deeds will not create bondage. You are free. Henceforth, you are free. But what of the past deeds that have already created bondage? So you see, they have to be worked out. Otherwise, you see that the chain of causation is snapped and the whole economy of nature is disturbed. You see that what has already been were allowed to be in bondage, or deeds that have already created bondage, they have to, or they have also have a span in which they have to be worked out. If they are not allowed, otherwise the chain of causation is snapped and the whole economy of nature is disturbed and thrown into chaos. So once you identify with Jivatma, you know that henceforth your future deeds will not create any problem. Henceforth your future deeds will not create any problem. But the past deeds that were already you have done, it doesn't mean that you are going to get scot free. Then you have to you have to allow them to have their effects. Of course, behind you, if you have the experience of Jivatma, you will have the grace where you don't have to suffer. You will be shown you will be shown or will be explained that what are the things had been there in the past birth or in the past birth bondage, and things that you have to now cross over to a higher nature. So it doesn't mean that you will be punished. It doesn't mean doesn't mean that it is able to work out its effects, doesn't mean it will be punished. Only things, it might be that the things are revealed to you and you know that how definitely you have to get over certain things, and so that you can cross over the higher nature more smoothly. So don't take it as a punishment, don't view this thing as a punishment, because the Jivatma, if you have gone to it, experienced it, it is always there behind as a master of Prakriti. It is there and it is always there to help you. It is not there to punish you, it is always there to help you to shift. And if you know what are the things that you have to go get over, because the past deeds where you created bondage, which had been in bondage because of the Prakriti, you know these things, then the clarity will come to you how you are going to improve yourself. So take this thing in a right spirit, don't take it in a punitive way. Now what happens to the Jivatma? This is very interesting. We told about the psychic being. The psychic being, we talked about the psychic being, that it can evolve from birth to birth. When it becomes a fully formed psychic being, it can decide not to be born again, or it can be born again, or in one or different ways. Its memories can be available for people who are receptive. It can, a memory template of a psychic being can in toto be transferred to another person, and then Mother has Sri Aurobindo have developed it further, that they can, psychic being can come and become the leader of the evolution by repressing the ego, and that the psychic being can be the template of the next formation or the next being that is going to be formed. But what happens to the Jivatma after death? What happens to the Jivatma after death? Now, this is Mother said in agenda, in 1961 agenda, you see that she is discussing, that she is saying that ordinarily people believe that with the demise of a person, the Jivatma is no more relevant. You see, when a person has died, that Jivatma is no more relevant, and then the Jivatma goes away. That she said that except Sri Aurobindo, everybody believes in that, in this kind of philosophy. Or some people believe that the Jivatma can get dissolved in the transcendental Atma, in the Paramatma. So you see, the Jivatma, which was there supporting the individual manifestation from behind, after the individual's demise, it was always believed that it could disappear with the demise of the subject, or it could just melt into the transcendent. Disappearance means it was disappearing with the disappearing into the origin from where it came. Disappearance means it is disappearing in the impersonality, it is disappearing in the transcendence, it is disappearing in the supreme void from where it had come. Only Mother says that Sri Aurobindo doesn't agree. Sri Aurobindo says that the Jivatma is necessary, it will remain, and it will remain because the individual phenomenon is also important. And if the Jivatma was not there, the individual phenomenon would not be supported. And if the individual phenomenon is not supported, and individual life in the material earth would never be supported and would never be permanent. Earth life would not be permanent. So the earth life would never be permanent. And Mother adds, immortality could not be pursued. Physical immortality would always be a dream. It would never come into reality if the Jivatma is dispensed with. So Sri Aurobindo explains that the Jivatma remains as a mode of being. You know, what do you mean by mode of being? It remains as a mode of being. The first modes of being, you can have some idea that the first modes of being were the light, life, love, and truth, which became the first Asuras. asuras of death, asuras of ignorance, asura of suffering, asura of falsehood. So all these things, asuras, they were actually the conversions of the first modes of being. Now, so in this question that was asked to mother, that in that case, there would be innumerable modes of being. There would be innumerable modes of being. And the mother answered, Sri Aurobindo speaks of the enjoyment and possession of the one by the multitude, of the multitude by the one, and of the multitude by the multitude. See, Sri Aurobindo speaks of an enjoyment of the one with the many, and the one with the many and the many. Such a play, as a cosmic play, must involve an innumerable diversity, innumerable. So that was needed. Otherwise, if that diversity is not permitted, then individuation will not be there. So the psychic being is supporting the individual phenomenon, but that the whole concept of the individuation is happening because the Jivatma is permitting the whole phenomenon to take place. And if the Jivatma is disappears with the demise of a subject, then material life can never be permanent. One day the earth also will not be there. But this is not Sri Aurobindo's contention. Mother and Sri Aurobindo want that the human race should go on remaining. They should not lose themselves, but they should go on remaining by evolving further and further, by evolving further and further. But individual evolution can never take place if the mode of being is not there. So if the central being, which or the Jivatma is also known as a central being, so it is very important. And this is also, again, mother says very emphatically, she explains it in this conversation of August 2, 1961 in the agenda, that people don't understand, but people don't what Sri Aurobindo says, but what Sri Aurobindo says is something unique, which nobody has said, that this Jivatma is going to stay. Now, this is a slide which I had shown the day before, that it was traditionally believed that the individual soul dissolved in the spirit. Sri Aurobindo has a different view. This is only Sri Aurobindo has a different view. Sri Aurobindo believes and has shown that the psychic being can join the Jivatma. You see, like that way, like the Jivatma is always there and it is retaining its individuality, but the psychic being is not dissolving into the Jivatma. The psychic being is not dissolving into the Jivatma. The psychic being is actually joining with the Jivatma. Now, this is very interesting. You remember that once mother said that who will collaborate? Because she was wanting that people who have come to her, some of the enlightened ones, they should collaborate with her. It's a very big word. Who will collaborate? Only to Nolinida he had said that thanks Nolini for a life of collaboration. Now, who will collaborate? To collaborate, you have to elevate yourself from being an instrument to be a collaborator. You see, we all who have come to Mother and Sri Aurobindo, we always want that we should be their instruments, so that they should use us for their work. So that is one thing, a great thing. But to some enlightened beings has been given the privilege of not only being an instrument, also to be a conscious collaborator. So that is a different thing. At the end of Savitri, he tells that when the new world will come, this collaboration will happen. So this is a collaboration that is going to take place when the psychic being is joining the Jivatma. It's a very great thing, and this is actually preparing for the new race that is going to happen. Because once the human being was given a willpower, he had also been given that opportunity to participate as a collaborator. You see, before the human being, the animals didn't have that willpower to stand out as individuals and to determine their own destiny. They were not given that. The human being has given that destiny. Only he can use the destiny at present to destroy himself by atom bombs, or to have a lackluster life because he doesn't know the future. He is not aware of what is awaiting him. But then Sri Aurobindo assures that something is awaiting him, which is great if one takes the what you call difficult paradigm of evolutionary growth. Then something is great is awaiting him, and this can only happen, this new that if there is a collaboration, and this collaboration needs a union of the Jivatma and the psychic being. Of course, as Nolinida says, this is what Nolinida has explained, Nolinikanta Gupta, that this joining takes place in the supermind, and as a result, the supermental personality becomes incarnate in the physical body. If it becomes incarnate in the physical body, then matter becomes radiant, the human being becomes a living form of the divine, and one crosses from ignorance to knowledge. So once it takes place, then only the supramental personality can be embodied. Then only we can say that the human being can evolve into a supramental being. So unless that what you call collaboration doesn't take place, we are not yet ready to evolve into supramental beings. Now, the new creation, this is also interesting. It is only in 1970 when Mother revealed that she had a powerful spiritual vision. Because why it is very interesting is because she was always contemplating that the new creation from the very beginning should be free from the stains of the inconscience, from ignorance, from falsehood, from suffering, from death. So the new creation has to be free from those. So to be free from those, its foundation cannot be the inconscience. It requires a new foundation. So she was wanting to build a new being. She would prepare a new being with a new foundation, and that foundation cannot be the inconscience, because once the inconscience is admitted, then you are admitting all the negative things. And then she was contemplating, thinking that how it can be done. You see, as late as 1970, this realization came to her very strongly. The psychic being was there. It is that will materialize and become the supramental being. It is a psychic being would be the template of the new creation. As the old creation was the foundation of the old creation was built from the inconscience, the foundation of the new creation will be built on the template of the psychic being. The psychic being therefore is supreme important in the next evolutionary march of the consciousness, because the psychic being is the one that will materialize and become the supramental being. That's why in any talk of evolution which is connected with Mother and Sri Aurobindo, the understanding of the psychic being is of very paramount importance, because it is going to lead in the future. It is not that at the present life it will give us a life of blissful rapture and oneness with the divine and we are satisfied with it. That is one part, but the other part is more adventurous, where it is going to be the template of the new creation that is going to happen. And it is a delegate of the unborn spirit projected into the manifestation. It doesn't carry the stain, the imperfection, and therefore it is very ideal for the new creation. You see, that is why Sri Aurobindo has said that only when you reach the supermind, you can be free from the inconscience. You see that even in the overmind, in the overmind, you are not free totally from the inconscience. You see, we want to be free from the unconscious, we want to be free from the inconscious, but it is not possible. It is not possible in ordinary way unless you go to the supermind. Then only, because the supermind, the superman or the supramental being will be constructed on a pedestal which is free from the inconscience, therefore it will not be under the influence of the inconscience. So you see that inconscience is so powerful, so you have to get out of it to what you call transcend it. So now this is an interesting thing. Personally also for me it is interesting. It is not a crucified but a glorified body that will save the world. You see that this old creation started with the ego as a nodal point, around which the amorphous substance of the material was organized to produce the individuality. Remember that slide where I told you that something amorphous, if a substance, from that amorphous substance a being was coming up with a scaffolding, and that scaffolding was the ego. At a certain point in time, that scaffolding can be dispensed with, as all scaffoldings are dispensed everywhere. So that scaffolding can be dispensed with. So when a consolidation happens, you don't need a scaffolding. So it is something like that. When the ego becomes consolidated, and then you see the ego becomes consolidated, then it has to be replaced. It has to be replaced, or you have to forego the ego and go to the Brahman, or you have to replace the ego. So the new creation is organized around the psychic being. So it is a totally different game, totally different ball game. So the material substance around it will be thoroughly transmuted and transformed. So it is a very interesting thing, because up to the point 1956, when the supramental came down, then it was that the crucified body which was known in the Western world, that was the savior. That was the savior. But when Mother brought down the supramental, then she changed the game. She changed the ball game, the rules of the game, that it is not going to be a crucified but a glorified body that will save the world. That is a very important thing. For me personally, it is very interesting, because I always used to think that why after the British came to India, there were very enlightened Indian individuals who had converted into Christianity, though they had not dispensed with the Vedas and Upanishads and Gitas, but they are very few, but very enlightened individuals, and they were very very immersed in Gita and Vedas, and but still they had become Christians. And then it came to me very strongly that it was done because this crucifixion that gave that what you call that inkling of what is compassion, what is love, universal love. So that was transmitted, no? Because when that crucifixion carried that message of universal suffering, universal love, when he was crucified, that for a moment he had carried all the suffering of the world, he had experienced it in himself. You see, there are three golden moments in the history of consciousness. One golden moment was when Buddha had entered Nirvana. The moment Buddha had entered Nirvana, it is said in Buddhist tradition that for one moment, all the suffering of the world was not there. Everywhere there was a feeling of joy. Then there was another golden moment, I see, I think it is called a diamond moment. It is not a golden moment, but a diamond moment. Anyway, what you call it, when during the crucifixion, because at that moment he had absorbed all the suffering of the world inside his being. But another diamond moment was when Mother had brought down the supramental in 1956 in the Earth consciousness, when the certitude came that the world will be changed by a glorified body. So it's a very interesting thing, and we have to work on that. Now the new body will be free from oddities. It would be sexless, as Mother has described. Their organs will be centers of transmission, and the usual process of procreation will be changed by supraphysical means, which we are seeing that already it is being taking place with the help of genetics, with the help of test tube babies and all those things, that we are progressing towards a stage where the usual process of procreation can be changed, and the features of the new body, as she has described, will be lightness, adaptability, plasticity and luminosity. So there is a lightness where you don't have any inertia, you are adaptable in all conditions, you don't have the resistance, you are plastic enough not to have any resistance, and you are luminous at the level of the cell. But the Mother has also speculated that there would be intermediary beings that will not last very long, because in a jump we will not become a supramental being. So intermediary beings will be there before the supramental being comes, and these intermediary beings were there between the chimpanzees and man. So the transition from the present human body to the supramental body will follow a continuity in the evolutionary trajectory. It will not be a discontinuous movement. It is actually a continuous movement. It is a culmination, a very logical culmination in terms of consciousness. If you are in terms of a very nihilistic theory, you don't find any logic in it. But you have the logic of consciousness, then the evolutionary trajectory will, of course, lead you to the supramental being via these intermediary beings, and that was the certitude that was given, and that the built is the golden tower, the flame child born. I think I've exceeded my time, and we will go in for comments and questions and other things that any of you will be offering.
Thank you, Sumitra. That was wonderful and quite fulfilling, the whole vision of evolution and coming back to the body and the embodiment of the where psychic being becomes a template of a new creation. By the way, the same description is given in Savitri, where the psychic being joins with Jivatma. Mother had that experience when they jumped, when they merged and became one. Yeah, so the psychic being and the Jivatma. It's a profound experience. Thank you. There are many questions here, and we could go one by one through them. And see what we can do. If you cannot answer all the questions, we will keep them and send to you separately for answering them. Yes.
So there is a question from Prakash Nair that recommended a book by Lolinikanta Gupta. It was not a book but an article, Lines of Descent of the Consciousness. You can get that. You can get that book in the. You can get that article in internet. And somebody will be asking that the difference between the psychic being and the Jivatma. The Jivatma is the Atma in the universal mode, but it supports the individual from the universal mode. It is supporting the individual, and the psychic being is a projection of the Jivatma in the individual manifestation. The Jivatma is beyond the manifestation. It is not directly participating in the process. It has sent its delegate as the psychic being to participate in the process. The template for a new creation means that it is to be the foundation on which the creation would be built. So this will actually, yeah, I have to understand that we have to build up totally from how mother was working on the new body, and we have to come to the first. We have to understand what is the subtle body, because behind our outer being there is an inner being. As we have an inner mind, we have an inner vital, then we have a inner physical is a word in English, it doesn't sound good, so Sri Aurobindo used the word subtle vital, subtle physical. So then first you have to understand the concept of the subtle physical, and then we can go to the next stage where the psychic being is can use the subtle physical as an instrument. You can use the subtle physical as an instrument so that the cells are getting aligned, or cells can getting elevated under his influence. So this will be just like that, step by step the thing will come, and it can come to a point where the psychic being itself can become the foundation for the new personality that is going to be built up. So it is not going to be built up from the unconscious, it is going to be built up from the psychic being. But to know how it is going to be built up from the psychic being, we have to understand the inner being, especially the subtle physical, how things are getting worked there, so that ultimately the psychic being can actually act as a template. So we can have afterwards a session for that.
There is a question from Radha here. Can you explain more any work that Sri Aurobindo did concerning the chakras? Or did he bypass the psychic being?
Where in the chakra?
Yes, the work
No,
on
no,
the
he didn't
chakras.
bypass. He didn't bypass the psychic being. In the chakra, he has a different view of the chakras. The chakras are the chakras. Actually, what happened? Why it is very practical necessity that Sri Aurobindo was forced to give a different view. What happened in the chakras, that when the chakras were opening up one after another from below upwards, a lot of energies were being released, and when the initial chakras were being opening up, when the guidance was not there, at a time came when the guides were not available, and in the absence of guides, a lot of sexual and physical energy was released, and it was being difficult to handle them. So though great things have come from that level, if you see erotic art in the temples in Khajuraho and Kanarak, they have come from that level where the consciousness had got stuck. Now Sri Aurobindo gave another perspective, where there is a Mahakundalini above, which can come down and can open the centers one by one that is needed. So there is a Mahakundalini which is above, which if necessary will come down, and it is not risky because it will open the centers as it needs. Because in you it might need to open center A and B. In me it might need to open center C and D at the beginning. So the Mahakundalini comes down, but the Mahakundalini can only come down if the psychic being has become. You have an experience of the psychic being. When the psychic, you have the consciousness is poised in the psychic being, then only then aspiration can go above, or the force can go above and invite the transcendence to come down and do the work. So that the whole thing of Sri Aurobindo's, the Mahakundalini coming down is necessary only, becomes fruitful only when the psychic being is acted upon, because it is only the psychic being only that will help in bringing down that new way of working. So it is very important. Only it is not following the traditional pattern, it is a completely different new thing. You need a separate session to understand the chakras.
Right. I've seen also interesting in the Indian literature, especially ancient literature, we find this descent from above only in the Vedas. After that, it is hardly mentioned. It is always then shifting from Kundalini rising from below. But this descent from above, invitation to come down, always come down, bring down from above, it is in the Vedas, in the Vedic hymns. There's another question here. What is the connection between the biological evolution and evolution in consciousness?
The evolution in consciousness is actually supporting the biological evolution of forms. The evolution of consciousness is not only is supporting from behind the evolution of forms. It is more concerned with at the beginning. It is more concerned with the evolution of the species, and then when we particularly work on it, then it is concerned. Then it comes. We can bring it in the evolution of the individual. But it is always there. It was always there behind. Only the outward expressions we are seeing in the biological evolution. We can't explain all the manifestations that are happening in the biological evolution unless you consider the influences also from the non-evolutionary worlds.
There is a question about the animals. Do they have psychic being, and what happens to their soul after they die?
They're deeply embedded inside in their outer consciousness, so that they are not on the surface. It is not on the surface, but it is there as an the soul spark is of course there in everywhere, and it is there very deeply embedded. Mother has Shivanand has answered a lot of questions on this on animals. So it is too embedded and too deep to come out and become conscious of itself. Only the human beings it can become conscious. In the human being it can be conscious and it can go on working. That is why Mother said that the Semitic religion said that only the man has a soul, because the soul becomes what you call functionable at the human being. But of course it is there in the animals, but deeply embedded to come out and have its effect there. Somebody has given a question that the consciousness has not improved. It is not saying since 1956 he doesn't find that the consciousness has improved. Of course it is true that the consciousness has not improved if you see it outwardly, but certain things you cannot understand in when you consider in terms of our linear time. You see that something is manifesting from behind, and behind all our outer machinations, no? Something is going up, and if you are very sensitive you can feel that it is growing. In 1926 Sri Aurobindo was asked that how will we know that the new creation will come? Before that, what will be the feelers? And then Sri Aurobindo had answered that before the new creation would come, there will be two things. There will be more of natural catastrophes like earthquakes. That is happening. It has happened also today in India. And there will be more of psychiatric problems, mental patients. So both are there. So that prophecy has actually come true, which is showing
So
that
you have
the
more
world
work
is
to
moving
do.
towards something that is going to come. Of course, before something is going to come, there will be an increase in chaos, an increase in all the obscure elements. So that we are also seeing that everything has come up and the inconscious has become revealed. You see, if Freudian theory is not working nowadays, because the Freudian theory was a theory of repression. Nobody represses anything. Everything is there in the open. You see, that the Freudian theory doesn't work because the time has now come for the consciousness to have a churning in the consciousness. So something like that is brewing up. We have to see we are in an exceptional time, and we have to see it from an inner perspective.
Great. There are questions about what to suggest to read on Sri Aurobindo there. So you could suggest some books on the evolution of consciousness. There is one book or article I could suggest, that is The Involved and Evolving Godhead, which was written in 1930s, later already, after Aryan period.
So I think that a lot of things like these questions of biological evolution and other things are they are explained in the Essence Divine and Human. They contain very practical tips on that. It is very interesting, in a very interesting way. It is given there in the Essence Divine and Human. So all the his comments on evolution and this the relation with biological evolution and all, he has given it very painstakingly, and how he accepts heredity and all the genes and all the family influences. Shivananda doesn't exclude them from his purview.
So there is a question how to contact you. Do you have an email or something? So we will send to everybody
Yes.
the consciousnessbasedcounseling.com, where you could be contacted. Great. Great, thank you. This was a feast of knowledge today. Beautiful overview of all the levels one by one. Unfortunately, we couldn't dwell on them longer. It would have been great to kind of unfold all those levels of evolution, especially mind after mind, illumined mind and intuition and overmind and how overmind functions. But we are planning to have a session on overmental and supramental consciousness with Dr. Basu, and it will come on the 6th of March. So you are welcome to join this session, and so we will speak about overmental and supramental levels and their functionings. Thank you, Sumitra Basu, for this beautiful morning for us and evening for you. And we reconnect next time. So, yeah, all the best. Namaste.